I gave Hermes Agent a founder's question. Which B2B AI markets are worth investigating? Instead of asking one chatbot for startup ideas, I built a small AI team. Each agent has a different job, its own persona, its own research skill, and a special handoff in a Kanban workflow. The final output wasn't just a random list of startup ideas. It was an evidence based scorecard ranking 5 different markets across buyer pain, demand signals, competitive pressure, AI leverage, and evidence quality. So, in this video, I will show you how I built the AI team, how the agents work together, and what the final research package actually says. Startup research looks simple until you have to make a decision. Funding looks like demand. Customer logos look like retention. A crowded competitor list makes a market look impossible, even when those companies serve different buyers and workflows. And generic AI answers tend to flatten them into a confident list of ideas. The goal here is not to generate another polished list of startup ideas. It is to build a research process that shows what we actually know, what we are inferring, and what remains uncertain. Then turns each promising idea into a small, low cost experiment designed to prove us wrong before we invest heavily. The startup intelligence team is a 4 agent system for turning ambiguous founders' questions into a bounded market investigation. The startup director acts like a project lead. It creates brief, sets the scoring rule, and breaks the work into tasks. The market researcher looks for sign that the problem is real. Buyer pain, demand, company formation, traction, and funding. The competition signals analyst looks for what already exists, what the alternatives are, and whether the market attention is turning into a real adoption or revenue. Finally, the skeptic editor tries to break the case. It audits the claims, challenges weak evidence, and turns the surviving findings into final recommendations and experiments. Each agent is created as a separate Hermes profile with its own persona, skills, and memory. The AI agents compare specific B2B AI SaaS markets, not broad industries. It defines the buyer, the workflow, the geography, the time window, and the evidence standard for each claim it makes before the research even starts. In this run, the agents compare 5 markets across healthcare, software development, contact center operations, finance, and retail. The output is designed for a founder who needs to decide what to investigate next, not for someone collecting interesting AI trends. The Hermes profiles do not share conversation history, so they need a durable communication layer. This is where Hermes Kanban comes in. The startup director creates 2 separate tasks, one for market researcher and one for competition and signals analyst. These tasks run in parallel. Then it creates a task for skeptic editor with both research tasks as parents. The skeptic editor doesn't begin with its task until both the parent research tasks are complete. The handoff travels through 3 things: the Kanban task body and comments, shared project directory, and the parent-child dependency links. Now, I'm going to run the entire workflow from the beginning. First, I create 4 Hermes profiles using these commands. After each profile is created, I run a quick setup for that profile and also set the model I want to use for that profile. Once the setup is done, for each agent I have created a separate soul.md instruction based on its role and responsibility. and I will update those for each agent through the Hermes desktop application. Also, each agent has its own specific skill. After creating the profiles, updating the stored empty instructions, and adding the skills, I will start gateway for each of those agents. Next, let's initialize the Hermes Kanban plugin using this command. And then I will create a new Kanban board for our workflow. Just go to Hermes dashboard. On the left sidebar, select Kanban, and here just click on new board and fill in all the details. Alright, now everything is set up. Let's start our research. I will start a chat with a startup director agent, as that agent would act as an orchestrator for our workflow. And today I will be using GPT 5.6 Luna model for our research workflow. And now let's give in the prompt. So this is what I would give. Find 5 promising AI SaaS startup markets in North America with meaningful evidence of customer demand and new company formation between Jan 2025 and August 2026. I'm giving the industry scope, for which industries it should look for, then the company scope, that it should only focus on B2B AI SaaS companies, and which companies it need to exclude, like the generic AI wrappers around foundational model APIs, the AI infrastructure, chips, data center, and model provider companies. So all these companies it should exclude from the research. I'm also giving some instructions on what data point it needs to use for analyzing the market, like market definition, funding, customer demand and traction, hiring signals, competitive landscape, customer complaints and unmet needs, hype versus substance. And at the end, I'm mentioning the evidence and criteria requirements, like what sources it needs to use and which source should have higher priority of confidence. And every claim that it makes about a market should be backed by a source. So let's copy this and paste in. Let's run it. The startup director's first job is not just browsing, it is converting the ambiguous founder question into 2 documents, brief and a rubric. The brief fixes the scope, geography, buyer, time window, exclusions, deliverables, and unknowns. And the rubric defines source tiers, scoring dimensions, claim statuses, counter evidence requirements, and the final evidence gate. Once both of those documents are created, it creates tasks for market researcher and the competition signals analyst agent. The 2 research tasks are independent, so the dispatcher can run them in parallel. The Skeptic Editor task doesn't begin until both of these tasks complete. That dependency is important because the Skeptic Editor should not write conclusions from half evidence. The market researcher is looking for buyer pain, company formation, funding, adoption, traction, and talent signals. It writes all its findings to a document and appends supported claims to a shared ledger. The competition and signals analyst is asking for different question. How is the job served today? Which products, incumbents, agencies, internal tools, or spreadsheets compete for the same budget? Is attention becoming real adoption, payment, or retention? The 2 agents are not duplicates. They are looking at the same markets but with just different judgment lenses. When the 2 researchers complete their tasks, the Kanban dispatcher promotes the Skeptic Editor task. The Skeptic Editor, it receives the parent task results, but it doesn't simply trust their summaries. It reads the actual research files, the claim ledger, the schema, and the exact supporting passages. This is the quality gate. Checks whether a citation literally supports the claim, whether the source covers the same entity and the time period. Whether a company metric is presented as an independent evidence and whether a recommendation has a real counter evidence. If the source only supports a weaker statement, the claim gets narrowed or downgraded. If the evidence is missing, the output is set as unknown. The goal is to not make every market look balanced. The goal is to make final conclusions harder to fool. After the audit, the Skeptic Editor agent owns the synthesis files and the final CSV package. The package contains multiple CSV files, each for market, competitor, companies, experiment, and claims. It is structured enough to import it into a spreadsheet or a visualization tool. But every important row points back to the claims ID and source evidence. These are the final CSV files it has generated. Markets, experiments, competitors, companies, and the claims. Let's have a look at the markets. It has ranked each market based on the startup opportunity score. The definition column includes what products are being built in the market, a recommendation about that market, a list of companies currently working in those markets, the customer complaints and unmet needs, the AI advantage that we can leverage in that market, the workflows that are being built, buyer, and there are many more things in this market CSV file. Let's have a look at the experiments. In this file, we get all the experiments that we can do for each market, like the hypothesis, who would be the target buyer, the procedure, channel, the sample size, the cost effort, the success threshold, failure threshold, a decision rule, and the evidence required. And let's look at the claims. It includes all the sources that were used in this research with the exact wordings, company or the market, claim type, what's the claim status, the source URL, the source title, when it was published, when it was retrieved, the source tier, and the exact passage. The company's file includes all the companies that were researched, what are their products, who is the buyer, and the differentiation they have. Hermes did not discover a guaranteed startup for me. It helped turn a vague founder question into a bounded research protocol, split the work across multiple specialist agents, moved the work through Kanban dependencies, preserved evidence in a shared ledger, and forced each recommendation to include counter evidence and a falsifier. So that's all I have for today. If you found this helpful, hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.